Hello everyone, and thank you for joining me today. This is Taliesin McKnight, and today's topic is the world soul. The world soul is a very important concept in Western occultism. This is one of the main ideas, and yet it is very rarely talked about. This concept is at the foundation of Western esotericism, the world soul, or the universal soul. So today I'm going to talk about this in regard to Plato, Marsilio Ficino, Heinrich Cornelius Agrippa. We're going to take a look at this concept of the world soul or universal soul. And why is this important? So, as I've talked about in my recent videos, I think it's very important before trying to practice a system of magic to understand its worldview. If you can get into the mindset of a tradition of magic, if you can get into the mindset, then it helps one to both understand the system, and some would be of the opinion that it actually helps to add efficacy or power to a working if you're connected with that worldview, if you're connected with that framework, okay? So, for example, before practicing hoodoo, try to understand what mindset root workers were in. What is the traditional concept, their model, which a lot of people would say is animism. By looking at things from a more animistic perspective, it helps you to get into that tradition and to work with it better. So whatever you're working with, if you can get into that mindset a little bit, this tends to help. Like I said, definitely to understand the magic system. And then some people, as I said, would say that it helps to add efficacy because you're now connected. Now, this is often referred to as subjective synthesis. So subjective synthesis refers to your worldview, to the worldview, okay? Subjective synthesis. So integrating these concepts is seen by many to be a preparation for working with a system of magic. So the classical magical worldview. If we could understand the classical magical worldview, then we can begin to unravel. We can begin to understand what these old books on occultism, these old books on magic and things like that, what these old texts on magic from the Renaissance and from Late Antiquity, what these texts are actually talking about. And like I said, today I'm mostly going to be focusing on the world soul, or the universal soul. So, what is this classical model in a nutshell? Before we specifically get into the world soul, I think it's helpful to build a framework and to look at the overall picture. And then we can see where the world soul fits into the overall scheme. So, in Renaissance magic, there is the idea that the universe is a living being, that the universe is a living cosmos, okay? So this is the concept that the universe is a living being, a living organism in a sense, okay? That the universe is imbued with life. So where does this concept come from? We could trace this through different routes. There are different ways of doing it. But one of the clearest examples, one of the texts that would make a huge impact on Western occultism is Plato's Timaeus. The Timaeus is a Platonic dialogue, okay? The Timaeus is a Platonic dialogue that outlines a cosmology, a framework for looking at the world. In Plato's Timaeus, a creator creates the universe as a living being. imbued with life. Okay? So this is important to understand. There is a craftsman or creator in Plato's Timaeus that fashions the universe as a living being, imbued with intelligence, imbued with a soul. So we see that the world was seen as a living being under this classical worldview. Now, in addition to this, the universe was believed to be, like I said, teeming with life. But also, we have a living cosmos. Not only was the universe seen as being alive, but every star, every planet, every zodiac sign was said to have a soul and an intelligence, to be a living being, okay? So if you look in the classical grimoires, this begins to make sense. If you look at the Key of Solomon, if you look at the Picatrix, if you look at, if you look at Sibley's Clavis or Key to the Magic of Solomon, if you look at, any of these texts, the Heptameron, you see that there are spirits of the various planets, spirits of the zodiac signs. So there's spirits of Leo, spirits of Libra, Sagittarius, Capricorn, spirits of all of these signs, Pisces, Aquarius. So as you can see, there is a spirit of an angel or spirit of every zodiac sign. So of course there's much more than just your sun sign. The main things are sun sign, ascendant, and moon, of course, in astrology. But basically, if you're a Capricorn, there is an angel of Capricorn, okay? So there are angels and spirits, divine beings, associated with each sign of the zodiac. There's spirits of every 10 degrees of the zodiac called deacons. Every 5 degrees of the zodiac, because there are 360 degrees in a circle, every 5 degrees is given a Shem angel, okay? And now we're getting into the Kabbalah and dealing with some of that magic. But there's 72 Shem angels in some of these traditions, and each angel is assigned to 5 degrees of the zodiac, so that each zodiac sign has 6 Shem angels. So altogether, 12 times 6 is 72. There's 72 Shem angels, the Shem Ham Pharesh, which we will get to. I do plan to make videos on the Shem Ham Pharesh and working with the Shem angels from a traditional Kabbalistic grimoire perspective. But that is another video. Basically, like I said, this is, in a previous video, I talked about how the Renaissance perspective, although there was a lot of, obviously it was a very Christianized time of human history, the Renaissance also, this was blended in with a lot of Neoplatonism, Hermetism, these types of ideas. And what you had, like I said, is a living cosmos, okay? And basically you have a type of astrological religion, in a sense. Like I said, under this classical worldview, every planet, every star, every zodiac sign has a spirit. Okay? So you have spirits of Mars, spirits of Mercury, spirits of Venus. And in classical grimoire magic, when you're working with spirits or creating talismans, normally what you're doing is you're calling on the spirits of Mars, Venus, Mercury. You're calling on spirits of the planets. So this is based in a worldview that is, at its core, it is astrologically based. This is an astrologically based perspective, in which you're working with astrology, basically, but these are spirits, intelligent beings in astrology. So if you get into astrology, you're going to love working with this type of magic, Renaissance magic. Classical magic Like I said, every zodiac sign has an angel, okay? Every 10 degrees has a spirit. The Shem angels, every 5 degrees of the zodiac has a Shem angel associated with the 72-fold name of God, the Shemham Varesh. Every planet has an Olympic spirit, an intelligence spirit, angel, archangels, entire choirs. So there are different. There's a whole hierarchy, a whole host of spirits associated with every planet and everything else. But all of this exists within the cosmos, within nature. So not only are we dealing with spirits of astrology, as crazy as it, you never hardly hear people talk about this. All the New Age books on magic, all these modern books, you never hardly hear people talk about, the spirits of astrology. Okay, you never hardly hear this. And you never hardly hear in modern books on magic talk about the world soul. I've been getting into classical magic for a number of years now. Really, I've jumped back and forth between classical and modern magic for quite a while. But it always strikes me how there are so many differences. Very rarely, sometimes you do see it, but very rarely do you see in modern magic a focus placed really even on astrology. A lot of modern magicians, it's not ingrained to look at things astrologically, okay? Astrology was at the center of this worldview. So if you want to get into grimoire magic, or if you want to get into, alchemical medicines, any of this old world type of stuff, it's important to understand the worldview. So like I said, we have a living cosmos. The universe was seen as a living being, and basically the universe is teeming with life. Every star, every planet, every sign of the zodiac had an angel, had a being that you could interact with, either through evocation, or you could, through a talisman, draw down that power. This is at the essence, this is at the core of the Renaissance view of magic. Okay? And also, in the esoteric tradition, dealing with mysticism, dealing with philosophy, dealing with the ascent of the soul to the divine, this was often seen as an ascent through the 7 planets. Now, I don't want to digress too far here, but every time you talk about a concept, this makes up an interconnected web, okay? This classical worldview or model of the world, this classical worldview is like a web. Everything is connected. You talk about one concept and another concept next to it. It's like pulling on a string, okay? So I am going all over the place talking about different things, but every time I talk about a concept, this idea comes up and this idea comes up. And really that's important when you build up a subjective synthesis. When you start to understand a worldview, it all comes together. It creates a type of web or a net. Okay, all interconnected links, a framework that is integrated in the mind. So basically, like I said, there's a living cosmos. The universe was seen as a living being. Now, world soul. It's important to understand that when we say world, what it's talking about is the universe. The world soul envelops and encapsulates all the planets, the zodiac, the constellations, the star clusters. Everything is included in world. So when you say world, soul, Anima Mundi, it means universe. okay? The whole cosmos, star clusters, everything are included in this one universal organism, okay? They've been talking about this for hundreds and hundreds of years. They've been talking about this really for millennia. They've been talking about the universe is a living being, but you don't see very many people talk about it today. So there is an interrelation between the human being, nature, or the universe, and the divine, okay? Now, a lot of modern ideas are really just a watering down of classical ideas. For example, people today, they talk about cosmic mind. Well, cosmic mind is God. Well, it very well may be, but in the classical model, the cosmic mind was not God. Okay? What they mean by cosmic mind is basically the universal soul or world soul. This was not the same as God. Okay? This worldview is at its root, this is found in paganism, classical paganism of the Neoplatonic tradition, Pythagoreanism, Neo-Pythagoreanism, Neoplatonism, Hermetism, and Gnosticism. This worldview all centers around the divine mind, which really, even though it doesn't have to be deified, it could just be seen under the Pythagorean concept of the one, the monad. At the very center of the classical worldview is the one. Okay? This is like a pyramid. Okay? There are all these beings, all these intelligences. At the apex of this pyramid is God, the one. So although there is a vast variety of beings and intelligences and planets, they are all spokes of a hub of a wheel, which is the one. The one, or the monad, is a very important concept, okay? And these early traditions were essentially pagan, but they all centered around the monad. All things come from the one. All things, everything comes from the one, okay? Really, even quite literally, all things are part of one substance. Looking at this from another angle, not necessarily the monad, but all things come from a one substance. As we see in Aristotle, Aristotle's metaphysics, as we see throughout the classical writers, this concept that everything comes from one, okay? We have the divine ground, the ground of being. All things spring from it. This is nous, the divine mind, in the Corpus Hermeticum. All things spring from the one, the divine mind, or the nous. Okay? In Neoplatonism, the hub, or the core of everything, is the one, or the good. Okay, the one, or the good, is the one, the foundational principle. Of course, the Pythagorean monad, the Platonic, the good, or the one in Platonism, in Plato, Aristotle's prime mover, working through these classical traditions, of course, would be seen as God, essentially, in the Renaissance, is God, okay? Everything begins with the divine mind. Now, the divine mind, everything begins with the ideas within the mind of God. Now, this is a very deep concept that cannot really be covered in a video such as this. We're here to talk about the world soul. But basically, in Platonism, the core of reality is the one, the monad, or the good. And from the good, you have the ideas, the Platonic ideas, okay? And basically, in Plato's Timaeus, the universe was made by a creator, okay? The Platonic cosmology is found in Plato's Timaeus. In Plato's Timaeus, this is a very important text that I encourage you to read. It talks about, and this is Timaeus, Timaeus, Plato's Timaeus. Basically, this dialogue talks about how the craftsman, okay, the creator, has made the cosmos after an eternal pattern. Now, what is this eternal pattern? What is this blueprint of which the universe is a copy? This pattern that served as the pattern or the blueprint of which the cosmos would be modeled. These would be the divine ideas. These are the Platonic ideas, okay? The universe was created as a living organism in Neoplatonism, based upon the divine pattern. The Corpus Hermeticum, the very first text of the Corpus Hermeticum, talks about the creation. And it talks about how the cosmos, the world, was based upon an eternal image. Okay? So nature is a reflection of the divine. And mankind, the human being, was seen as a perfect microcosm, a reflection of nature. So there is an interrelation between mankind, the human being, the cosmos, and the divine. But yeah, basically, the cosmos is fashioned according to a divine image. Okay? So basically, nature, the cosmos, is made according to a divine pattern under this idea. So nature is made in the image of God, essentially. Okay? So nature is made in the image of God, and man is made in the image of nature. And like I said, this is the interrelationship between mankind, the cosmos, and the divine. Okay? If you understand one, you understand the other. If you look within and understand yourself under this wisdom tradition, in this wisdom tradition that was at the core of this worldview, you look within, you study yourself, and you can understand something about the universe, okay? You understand the universe, and you can understand yourself and the divine. So, in Plato's Timaeus, Timaeus talks about how essentially the cosmos was created. In this text, it talks about how intelligence is more fair than unintelligence, and therefore the universe was made as an intelligent being with a soul, okay? And it talks about how the body of the universe was composed of fire and earth so that it could be visible and tangible. But these needed an arithmetical mean, okay, which would become air and water under this schema, okay? Now, this doesn't mean that you have to take all this literally. This is a poetic narrative. This does not mean that this is literally how the world was created. In our modern worldview, we tend to take everything literally. We need to understand that this is a poetic story. But in Plato's Timaeus, the universe was fashioned from earth, air, fire, and water. Okay? And was given a soul, a life. And the form. What is the form that includes all other forms? If the universe was to be an animal, an organism, that includes all other organisms. A shape that includes all other shapes. And what is the shape in Platonism that includes all other shapes? Would be the sphere. Every point on its surface is equidistant from the center. Okay, so the sphere was seen as a perfect image. Okay, the cosmos was made without ears, without eyes, for seeing, without ears for hearing, without senses, because it is turned inward on itself. Its sensing is within itself. It is completely self-sufficient, turning about its own center. Therefore, the cosmos could be seen to be self-reflective. It is drawn within itself, meditating upon itself, okay, seeing through itself. So this is this worldview of the world soul. The world soul, like I said, was seen as a type of universal being. The universe was alive under this classical model of the world. The world soul was also the intermediary between the divine ideas and material things. And the divine ideas were reflected into the seminal reasons of things, which is then reflected in the heavens, and therefore the heavens are a reflection of things that happen here on earth. So basically you have different layers of reality, but the soul of the world, the Anima Mundi, the universal soul, was seen as the glue that held it together. It was that which united the divine intellect with matter, was the world soul. So this is a very important concept. So we have on the one hand, we have the divine. On the other end of the spectrum, we have the material world of stones, metals, plants, animals, things like that. The correspondences. And in between, we have nature. Nature is the intermediary between man and the divine. Nature is the intermediary between man and the divine. So it is nature, the world soul. Like I said, the universe was a living being. Nature was an intermediary. Okay? Understanding nature, being a student of nature, was intrinsically understanding yourself and the divine. And this is a very important concept to understand. So whenever you're looking at what's going on astrologically, you're looking at what's going on in the macrocosm. What is the macrocosm? People talk about, the Hermetic adage, as above, so below. As within, so without. As it is in the microcosm, so it is in the macrocosm. When you're talking about the macrocosm, just keep in mind that in essence, what you're talking about is the world soul. You're talking about the soul of the world, okay? The Anima Mundi. And again, when we say world, we're talking about the universe, okay? So when you're looking at current astrological conditions, you're looking at what's going on astrologically at the time, basically, when you align your workings, whether you're working on talismans, whether you're making spagyrics or alchemical medicines, whether you're looking for the proper electional time to engage in some activity, okay? Or whether you're working on evocation talismans, like I said, elections, for looking for the proper timing to do something, whatever the case may be, whenever you're looking at what's actually going on astrologically, you're aligning your microcosm, yourself, with the macrocosm, the universe, okay? You're aligning the piece to the whole. And this is an important concept. So for a lot of modern magicians and occultists that haven't really thought about what's astrology before, for those of you that have never really considered, what is actually going on astrologically in the heavens right now when I do this working, looking at what's going on astrologically, astrological conditions were critical for the success of a working under the classical worldview, okay? And basically, like I said, you're attuning yourself to nature. You're working with the tides, and you're working with the current, so to speak. So, to work against astrological conditions is not only are you not being in sync with nature, but also it's like swimming against a current, okay? So if you look at the phases of the moon, if you look at what's going on astrologically, if you look for the proper timing, that is like swimming with the current. And again, as above, so below. You're making the below, you're working, reflect above, okay? You're uniting. You are uniting. Not to use necessarily a modern image, but to bring it home here, the magician card, he points up and points down. You are uniting above and below. You are making these in sync by adding astrology to your working, okay? So this is a very important concept. So what is astrology? What are you actually looking at when you do that? What are you doing when you look at the astrological model? What you're doing when you look at the astrological map as you're looking at the world soul, okay? And this goes all the way back to the, well, all the way forward, because we're way back here in late antiquity. Moving forward, you look in the Rosicrucian manifestos. It talks a lot about nature, following nature's laws, okay? Following the ways of nature, being a philosopher of nature, is essentially following the universe and the universal currents and patterns. And it's important to understand that the astrological map is essentially this classical model, okay? If you understand astrology, then you, a large extent, you understand the classical worldview. Everything has an astrological correspondence. It can be metals, it can be stones, plants, animals, colors, timing. Everything could be associated with an astrological correspondences. You know, glasses could be associated with Mercury. Speech could be associated with Mercury. Light could be associated with the sun. The color blue, Jupiter. You could say that dressing with a shirt and a tie could be kind of a Jupiterian type of thing. I mean, there's so many things. Everything could be associated with an astrological correspondence, okay? So that if you truly internalize this perspective, this worldview or model, then basically you could realize that the universe around you, the world around you, is a living symbol system, okay? Everything around you has a correspondence. And some believe that when this is fully internalized, basically you're aligning your microcosm with the macrocosm, okay? When you internalize this, you're aligning yourself with nature in a sense. And also, not only that, but also some are of the opinion that when you fully integrate this system of symbolism, that the universe has a language, that the universe could even begin to speak to you through a series of puns or hints, okay? So this is a very important concept. In my opinion, the Tree of Life is a wonderful map. The Kabbalistic Tree of Life is a wonderful model. But if you really want to understand classical magic, traditional classical magic, I think it's good for the time being just to scrap the whole thing, just because there's so many modern ideas, so many modern concepts thrown into it, tarot, Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, all of these things that are modern, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with these modern systems. But if you really want to understand classical magic, I think it's important to get into the worldview. And like I said, this is subjective synthesis, is to when you work with a tradition of magic, especially if it's based on a totally different orientation, it helps to get into the Renaissance mindset. This is getting into the mindset of a Renaissance magician, okay? This is mentally getting into the mindset of a Renaissance magician, understanding how they saw the world, okay? So I think that that's an important idea to understand. So anyways, the world's soul, essentially the universe, is a living being, the universal soul, okay? It encompasses all of nature. This is a very important concept. And I really encourage people to read up on this. What should you read? Well, first of all, I really recommend that people read Plato. Plato is very important, okay? Plato is very important. Plato's Timaeus. Timaeus. I think that that's a very good place to begin. I say begin, but it's really a lifelong study. Read Plato. It's an excellent resource. So anyways, that is today's topic on the world's soul. Many more videos are to come. Thank you for joining me. Once again, this is Taliesin McKnight, and I'm back making videos regularly. If you would like to support my channel, below in the description box is a link to my Patreon. So be sure and support my work if you appreciate my videos, because all of my videos are free for the public. And thank you very much, and I will see y'all next time. Have a great day, everyone.